But we were raised in a low working class family in Lavington in Albury. Our car was a Datsun. It would leak with rain. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. At 16, you feel like that's your whole destiny, right? I'm meant to be playing in the NBA. Like, why didn't I make this team? And I called my coach and he said to me, you know what, Chels, you're just not good enough yet. That was such a pivotal moment for me because it taught me about hard work and it taught me about discipline and it taught me about how to overcome failure. I had a horrific mental illness with postnatal depression, which landed me in a psychiatric hospital. And it was this question that changed everything in my life. And it was, Chelsea, how do you want to feel in this life moving forward? Not what do you want to have? And I said to her, I want to feel a sense of calmness. Then I founded a company called EQ Minds to teach other people how to have less stress and less anxiety and live a calmer lifestyle. When you first start up your company, it becomes your identity. It can get really tied up in the company you're creating and it becomes very hard to separate the two. This is my new path. If I can help one person, just one person in this world to never end up in a hospital bed like me, what an amazing life that would be.
It sounds like you have a very strong message to be able to share. What would you want to share to help them through it?
I would say that one,
Welcome to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we help mentor you into becoming a more successful version of yourself. We do this through giving you access to mentors you typically would never have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their experiences, their life-changing events, their fields of expertise, and most importantly, their purpose. My name is Harry Goldberg, husband to an incredible woman, father of two amazing daughters, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast, and director and advisor and meditation teacher of Purpose Advisory. This purpose-driven project is entirely funded by Purpose Advisory, which I am a director of. We guide clients to make great life and money decisions, and we do this through a range of different services. Life vision experiences, personality, investment strategies, cash flow systems, and through teaching meditation. If you want to learn any more about any of these, link in the comments below. Now, just before we learn from yet another exceptional guest, if you find value from these conversations, please make sure to like and subscribe below, leave a review. It really does make a difference. And of course, share it with someone else who's going to find value. Now, listen in, pay attention, take some notes, enjoy. Let's begin. Chelsea Pottenger, welcome.
thank you very much for having me here, Harry. It's great to be here with you.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. All right, so for the listeners, we have here Chelsea Pottenger, founder of EQ Minds, having a background of 12 years in corporate and now 6 years as international speaker, working with corporate brands. You can do all the name dropping later. Let us know who you're working with, but basically empowering and educating people to take care of their own mental health and the health of and well-being of their staff member, their teams as well. So there's a lot of journey, which I'm really looking forward to diving into. But maybe before we go there, how do you define success?
So, Harry, I define success as something different for me anyway to job titles and degrees we have or possessions we acquire. For me, I really feel as a society, sometimes we invest more in a distorted image of who we are. We see ourselves as a job title or, these degrees we have, awards we win, possessions we get. And over the years, I really feel like that self-image accumulates almost like this compounding interest in the bank. Mm-hmm. And as this concept grows, who we are, it grows stronger. We form this real strong attachment to that. And we become almost like rigid and closed off to change and unable to show vulnerability as a leader or as a founder of a company. And my mum, she'll probably feature a little bit in this podcast just because she is like my wise counsel. Mm-hmm. And when I was growing up, she said to me, you know what, my darling, you gather more flowers in this life with an open hand rather than a closed fist. And what she was meaning by that is that the closed fist, it hardens us and it separates us. While being like this humble leader, it opens us and it softens us and it connects us. And one of the gifts that I've found over my journey of starting EQ Minds and practicing mindfulness daily is a deeper awareness for me anyway of how the choices in the past, they influenced sort of by my own sense of self-importance.
Hmm.
And with that awareness now, I can recognize that my probably my identity back then used to be based more on material wealth and status and success. And to be honest, for the past 8 years, having EQ Minds as a company, I've challenged that, with self-acceptance. And for me, I really feel like simply there's no progress in this life without humility, and it allows us to see beyond ourselves. And so, in a long answer, to go back to how do I define success? Success to me is living a calmer life. Like, it's doing work that's on purpose. It's having impact on people's mental health. It's investing in strong connections with my family and good friends, and it's doing charity work and creating great memories. And that is success to me.
Okay, so you just said something that I'm sure that a lot of people, I agree with you. That's awesome definition, and I know that a lot of people listening are probably going to have the first thought in their mind going, "Hang on, wait. She just said a calmer life, but she doesn't look like she's living a calm life. She's doing a lot of stuff. She's got a full calendar. She's busy doing all of these amazing things, and uh, even now, like this conversation, right afterwards, you're going to go with your daughter and help her with a track and field and support her, and you're busy talking to all these big brands, and you're running your own business, and you're doing all these impressive things. And to a lot of people, that doesn't sound calm. So when you're saying living a calmer life while still having the purpose and the impact, how do you live a calm life and do amazing things at the same time?
It's almost like a juxtaposition, isn't it?
Mm,
I
it
really
is.
feel like people don't feel like you can be calm and be a high performer, but the opposite is true. And, that's why I actually called my book that I've just published in the last 12 months called The Mindful High Performer because of that. And to be honest, how I define calmness, and it came from my amazing psychiatrist. So for those of you that I haven't met before, the pivotal moment for me of starting EQ Minds was because I had a horrific mental illness with postnatal depression, which landed me in a psychiatric hospital. I was really
Mm,
unwell. I had to stay there for 5 weeks when Clara was only 9 weeks old. And at the end of the 5 week stay, after I started to get my old self back, my amazing psychiatrist, she was the one actually that encouraged me to move out of Sydney and go back to retrain and study psychology. But it was this question that changed everything in my life. And it was, Chelsea, how do you want to feel in this life moving forward? Not what do you want to have? And I said to her, I want to feel a sense of calmness. I want to feel at ease. I want to feel a sense of peacefulness, and I want to have less anxiety. And she said to me, that's beautiful. And from now on, all your decisions are going to be based on that. So, for example, Harry, I moved out of Sydney, the big sort of smoke in the eastern suburbs of this fast pace. And I moved to a small town on the south coast of New South Wales. We have like 3,500 people here in our town. It's a surf beach. We've got horses on the rolling hills. It's just spectacular. But I moved here for a calmer lifestyle. I went back to university to study psychology, to learn tools for myself of how I could become a calmer human being. Then I founded a company called EQ Minds to teach other people how to have less stress and less anxiety and live a calmer lifestyle. The people that I spend time with are calm, positive human beings. The content that I read, the things that I watch, all these stimulus and my environment that I keep around me, even my home here, it feels like you walk into a retreat. And because that's the feeling that I've always, that for me, that's how I define success in my own personal life. How I feel in this life is everything. And then my family get the best version of me too.
mm. I like that. Very similar to, in a lot of ways, Vin Jeng, who was on an earlier episode, and he's over in Adelaide, but he's like this international keynote speaker. He spent a few years going around the US and has been very successful. It's like, wait, you're still staying in like small little Adelaide? He just finds it so much more beautiful for himself and his family, and he can continue to stay closer to his parents who
Hmm.
decided to disown him and become monks, basically. So like an amazing story there as well. But yeah, he realized that for himself, his freedom was ultimately the freedom to allow himself to be peaceful in
Mm-hmm.
every moment. I
Mm-hmm.
was just chatting with a client not too long ago about like they're really worried about uh, learning meditation. We teach meditation, similar to yourself, I imagine. I'm curious what types you teach. But he was talking about this hesitancy to learning meditation because it's like, oh, but then if I actually learn it and I become more peaceful and I'm calmer, then I'm not going to do as much. I'm not going to be as driven, and I've got more that I've got to achieve first. And so obviously there was a whole long conversation from that. But I'd love to hear your perspective, building on what you just shared previously. If someone's saying, if I become peaceful and calmer, I'm not going to get the results that I really want to achieve. I might enjoy my life a little bit more, but I'm not going to get to where I want to get to.
This is why I love, that the science is catching up with these kinds of Eastern therapies,
Mm-hmm.
because what we definitely do see is that when you practice meditation, what happens in the brain is just magnificent. So the amygdala, like the brain will change in real time. And it happens over a period of a few weeks where you start noticing things for yourself. But something that I found significant, which was the real hook for me to get curious about the practice, is that the amygdala, where the stress and anxiety centers reside, that actually becomes less reactive the more you practice meditation on a consistent basis. Now, when you do that and you see the studies that support that, what that means for us and why this kind of information should blow our minds for the people who are listening on this call, on this podcast, is because if your amygdala is getting less reactive, what that means for all of us is that we become less stressed. We are less reactive. We are more in the moment. We are less quick to rise to anger. And when these kinds of things happen, what happens then also is your hippocampus, your memory center, you can now tap into that. So you have a better memory recall and retention rate. And another benefit, I mean, there's like 2,000 clinical papers these days on the benefits of meditation for the brain and the body. But the third one is that the prefrontal cortex, where all the executive decisions are made, the creativity comes from here, the front part of the brain, that actually gets stronger. So more grey matter is firing in there. So we're making better decisions. And like the body, I always say this to people with their brain, meditation is taking your brain to the gym. It's like lifting bicep curls in there, which makes that organ stronger. And so if you want less stress, if you want higher performance, if you want a greater memory, if you're sitting exams at the moment and you need a better recall retention rate, if you want more creativity, the science is just too outstanding to deny it anymore. And for the skeptics, join the club, right? I used to be a skeptic massively before I ended up in hospital. For the skeptics out there, one, go and read some scientific papers about it. And then two, try it out. Try it. It's free. It's natural. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen in a few weeks? You become happier. You become a higher performer. I mean, that's a pretty awesome side effect of something that's free for us.
And what's the actually, sorry, before we dive into the form of meditation, this is cool. I wanna stick with your journey for a little bit longer as well. So you're working in corporate. You look like you got pretty senior. You were in big pharma. It looked like, and then you were involved in some kind of medical, the breast clinic, I think it was as well.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell me your journey of your career up until the point where you transitioned to EQ Minds?
Yeah, sure. So I was in medical device sales for a good decade, and that was for a small company called Johnson and Johnson. People may have heard of them before.
Not so small, yeah.
And it was brilliant. I loved it. I learned so much from that company. And that was one of the pivotal moments definitely for my success of, being a medical device salesperson of the year a couple of years in a row. It really gave me the skill set, I think, to be successful in business these days too. So I'm very grateful for my period of time there. And also I got a really good understanding of what the corporate world was like. my lifestyle back then was completely different to what you see now. I used to do 12-hour days. I was so, like, I'm still a very driven human being, and I was so driven back then, but I worked differently. It was 12-hour days. It was Hendrick's gin at night to take the edge off the stress. It was triple shot flat whites. It was triathlon training. Living in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, we used to work hard, party hard, work out hard. Like, everything was like high cortisol. And that's a pretty unsustainable pace, to be honest. And it took us about 7 years to fall pregnant with Clara. And that happened actually when I left Johnson and Johnson and started started a different position as a GM for the breast clinic. But when I felt pregnant, I was so elated because that had been a dream of mine for a very, very long time, of becoming a mother. And then after giving birth to Clara, I suffered really severe postnatal depression, it really sideswiped me, to be honest, Harry, because I'm such an optimistic person naturally. I didn't truly understand the depths of what depression looked like until I went through it. The anxiety that then was so crippling for me for 9 weeks that it switched over to very, very significant depression where I was suicidal and I had to get admitted straight away into a hospital unit. And to be honest, that was the safest place I could be, was in a hospital bed. I could not trust myself out in the public. It was very, very scary. Very, very scary for your mind to play tricks on you like that. And that was the catalyst of when I was laying in that hospital bed and thinking, I'm not going to change the world laying here. And when I had that insight of what it looked like from a very unwell patient, and then when I started to recover, because I couldn't think about anything, to be honest, for those first few weeks, except for myself and how anxious and depressed and sad I was. But with the right treatment, and I'm so grateful to St. John of God, who is the hospital there in Sydney, they honestly saved my life. And with the guidance of my psychiatrist and the support of my family and good friends, when they said, maybe you should go back and retrain as a psychologist, that would give you so much purpose. Maybe there's a message, right, into this trauma of why you had to go through this to get to a different calling. And so that was the catalyst, right? That was the moment in time that I thought, you're absolutely right. And so a couple of questions that my psychiatrist posed to me really helped me transition from a place of post-traumatic stress disorder into a place of post-traumatic growth. Things like that she would ask me is, well, what can we learn from this experience? And how could we grow from this? And that does take a bit of time past the trauma. You can't ask people those questions when in the depths of anxiety and depression because they're just too into it, right? They're just too close to the story and you can't see a way out. But when you do recover, those questions shift everything in your mindset. And she recommended that I went to the Nantin Temple, which is down near Wollongong, which is where the Buddhist monks are. And I went there.
Very peaceful place.
So beautiful. And she prescribed me 3 months of loving kindness, compassion meditation. What a legend. What a legend. And so I went there and did that because I had a fair bit of shame and guilt around suffering postnatal depression. And when I was sitting there doing my meditations, one of the monks came up to me and just said to me, you know what, Chelsea, sometimes you have to go through this real big hardship. Sometimes it's when you crack. That's where the light comes in, and this is pulling you onto your true calling for this life. So there's these moments in time, Harry, where the penny was dropping. And I thought, you're right. This is my new path. If I can help one person, just one person in Australia, in this world, to never end up in a hospital bed like me, what an amazing life that would be.
What point did that switch for you? Like, what point did it go from it's all about me and my frustration and my pain, and then you mentioned before that you realized, it sounded like you realized during those 5 weeks in hospital that you're not going to change the world from here. Was that a realization you had there, or is that something you've intellectualized since?
Yeah, that was something that I had towards the end of the stay when I started to feel like my old self again. And
so just quickly, when you say old self, I'm guessing you're not talking about your old self partying hard, working out hard, like doing coffee hard, working hard, all of that, right? I'm
No,
guessing you're talking long before that.
that's a good question. I'm talking about a well Chelsea, like where I've got the capacity then to create and execute on different plans. And so that decision of, what was really funny is that when I started to recover, I went to the 19 Temple and went back to university and learned how to meditate and those kinds of things. Was that I remember speaking to my husband going, "Hey, darling, everything I'm learning at the moment, what do you think? I think it'd be really helpful in the corporate world. Like, I can't remember anything when I was in corporate, anyone coming in and helping us with like practical ways to decrease stress." And he said to me, "Oh yeah, that sounds really great." He's like, "I think that'd be really, really good for corporate." And he is just like, "It's a cute hobby, right?" He's like, "Chelsea, it's such a cute hobby." He's like, "You should totally," and because Jay's like, "You don't never have to go back to work, sweetheart. I just want you to be well and healthy and happy." And so I was in town in Gerringong training the Rotary Club, the 85-year-olds down here in Gerringong on mindfulness and gratitude, and I was having a great time. And then, I'd meet them at the beach pool and they're like, "Oh, Charles, we're doing our gratitude." I'm like, "Oh, Beryl, that's amazing." And I was just loving it. I felt so fulfilled. I was going to see old clients in hospitals and training them. And Jay just thought, "Oh, she's really happy doing this little hobby of hers, helping people with mindfulness." Because Harry, mindfulness wasn't really a thing back then in 2016 in Australia. It was a thing overseas, but no one was really talking about it here then. So I kind of got the wave at the right time as well.
Was it, so your husband kept saying, that sounds like a nice hobby. Were you thinking of it as a business, as a future career?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, because the passion of like that and that mission of empowering people to take care of their mental health, I'm like, you know what? It didn't actually feel like work to me. I'm like, this is just I feel so great doing this. And the funny thing is that when I said to Jay, I think I'm going to set up a company, and Jay's a banker, right? So I think that's important background history for the people who are listening to know that, because bankers are majority of the time skeptics and risk adverse, and they like to know data. And I remember Jay said to me, "You know what, sweetheart, what's the chances that this could fail?" And like within a second, I'm like 0%, like 0%. And he's like, 0%? Like no one says that. No one says that.
No, I never said 0%.
And I had that much belief in it, Harry, because I was thinking about it when I was having a shower. I was thinking about the company and impact when I was driving the car. I was thinking about it when I was chopping carrots. And this unwavering obsession that I had inside every cell of my being, I knew that this couldn't fail.
That obsession, right? Like the digging your teeth into something and holding on to it. Is that part of your natural personality? Like, did you have that previously?
Yeah, I think it is a natural thing that I've had, which is circumstantial, I think, to the things that have happened in my life. For example, when I was young, I was big into basketball, and I had some rejection along the way. I remember I didn't make this under 16s basketball state tryout team, and I was devastated. I was playing alongside Lauren Jackson, so that was the caliber of player I was competing up against. No pressure, everyone.
No pressure. You should definitely judge yourself for not doing well enough.
Yeah,
Definitely.
totally. And I remember I didn't make this team, and Loz made it, and we went home together in the car because we grew up in Albury together. And I called my coach, and I was devastated, and I was crying because at 16, you feel like that's your whole destiny, right? Like I'm meant to be playing in the NBA. Like, why didn't I make this team? And I called my coach, and he said to me, "You know what, Charles? You're just not good enough yet. That's the truth. So you've got 6 months to turn this around to make, the state teams that can compete with the Australian junior teams. So if you want to do this, I'll train you at 5 a.m. every morning before school in Albury." Now, Harry, do you know how cold it gets in Albury winter? It's freezing, right? Down there. "I'll train you at 5 a.m, Chelsea. Let's change your diet. Let's put you on some creatine," which is what they used to do back then, right? To bulk us up in the gym. and let's get you lifting differently in the gym, lifting weights. And 6 months from now, you might just make that Australian junior team. And that was such a driving force for me because he was bang on, right? Like I wasn't good enough yet, but with a different approach, I definitely could be. And so I trained hard and I did everything he told me to do for the next 6 months. And 6 months later, I actually made that team. And, I was like the second draft pick. And, obviously Lauren Jackson was number one. And I'm okay being her number two girl for sure in that team. But that was such a pivotal moment for me because it taught me about hard work and it taught me about discipline and it taught me about how to overcome failure. And when you're a founder, these skills are exceptionally helpful. And when I started EQ Mind, I was in this scenario where I was doing it all by myself for the first 3 years. You wear every single hat and it's enormously hard. And from a strategic, decision, from tech, from marketing, business generation, all those kinds of things, you need discipline and you need grit and you need fierce independence. And those were skills that I learned from high-level basketball for sure.
And did you have that same tenacity in other roles in your career as well? Like when you were at Johnson Johnson, multi-year award-winning
Yeah.
top sales.
And I think it also came from an upbringing of not having much too, right? So my mum and dad, we had lots of love. We have such a close family still. I'm very, very tight with my brother and sister and my mum and dad. But we were raised in a lower working class family in Lavington in Albury. Our car was a Datsun. It would leak with rain, right? When it rained, we'd have to pull out the holes on the ground so the rain could come through and fall into the, road. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. So at 14 years, 9 months, I had 3 jobs. I dropped pamphlets off every morning. I would referee basketball. I worked in the Coles deli. Plus I went to school. Plus I was training for basketball because I really wanted to buy a Rip Curl wallet for $49 that had a Velcro strip. And so I am used to the hustle. I am used to the grit. I am used to working hard for stuff. And so I think there's key things here that have developed through my a few pivotal moments of my life and my upbringing. And I see these traits in my brother and sister as well, and also the enormous generosity that the three of us have. We do a lot for our parents now too, because we just love them so much. But that generosity spreads not just within our family, it spreads across charity and across friendships as well.
I love hearing this. Okay, so you basically put down there's an element of your personality that has this tenacity, as well as an element of just your upbringing that's helped you have this discipline and grit and fierce independence. And then you were given amazing opportunities by people you wouldn't really expect to get those opportunities from necessarily. But you're given these opportunities to be able to prove yourself from a young age. Do you find that most people don't even have the opportunities to prove themselves until they're a lot older, like until they're already in their career and then they have more responsibility on their plate as well?
It's a really, really good question. I think one of the big things that parents, if there's parents listening right now to this podcast, one of the best things that they can do for their children is to throw them into a lot of different things where they're going to be a beginner and learn a mindset, where they're going to have to learn new skills. They're going to have to learn to upskill. They're going to have to learn how to fail. And, I think about this with our daughter all the time. She has to hit the pavement. Has to. She has to fall over in the cement a few times. She has to be able to form up that grit, because it's in the challenging times that's where we grow, right? That is where the grit lies. But it's then empowering them with the tools around them for growth mindset and resilience, so they persevere, right? They have this motivation and this perseverance to get through it. For people who are older, like, well, Chelsea, I haven't had any adversity or any challenging times. Guess what? It's coming, okay? Because it's an inevitable part of life. And one of the best things that you can do is to be in this constant learner mindset to try out new things, but you're going to fail at stuff. I still do it, right? I took up horse riding this year. I took up surfing 2 years ago. Every year I'm learning something new where I'm absolutely crap at it. And because A, it's humbling. B, you have to put yourself in this mindset of like, okay, I can get through these things. I can get through these tough times because, I've proven it through the evidence that I've seen in my previous experiences. So that is definitely something to do. B, if you are going through an intense time at the moment with challenges, whether it's someone in your family's got a cancer diagnosis, or you had a really terrible relationship breakup, or you've had a fight with your mum or something, whatever it is, I think when you're in these moments in time, if you can, one, bunker down and get through that period of time, and depending on the intense adversity of whatever it is for you, do due diligence. If you are going through the loss of a loved one, definitely go and see a psychologist or a cognitive behavior therapist and get the right help around you, right? Like, make sure you go and see an expert who can help you with that grief. And then for the people who aren't at that extreme level, but they're going through some hardship, like their overseas plans kept getting cancelled through COVID, or they failed a course, or they didn't get a job promotion, then I would do some personal work on that, going, okay, well, what can I learn from this experience? And how can I grow from this? And if you can change your mindset into that and see the silver lining, like that's kind of around the turd of that moment in time, then that is an incredible tool you're teaching yourself of resilience.
And I guess a lot of people hearing this will go, well, yeah, but nothing's ever really that major for me. I don't really have that many challenges. And so then they're thinking, well, I mean, I can't really practice it until I have those issues. So maybe I should just have more issues. I mean, maybe that's one way to do it, right? Take on more responsibility. You're going to have more challenges. You're going to have to somehow find a way to push through it if you feel you're ready for the challenge. But I think that's something that a lot of people miss, is this idea that they create, if they don't have challenges in their life, they're going to create them. They're going to manufacture them. They're going to come up with reasons to be upset. And we're in a very fortunate country. And most people listening to this, because it's English based, are probably in very fortunate positions relative to the rest of the world. And yet people aren't necessarily happier here than they are in other much less wealthier environments or much less resourced environments. And what suicide rate is increasing for kids in Western countries. I don't hear any stats of it increasing for kids in other countries, but maybe that's just less reporting. And that's quite alarming, right? Because it means that it's not your actual circumstances that are driving whether or not you're going to be happy or feeling good or being calm or peaceful or enjoying life. It's the way we're perceiving it, right?
Yeah.
And so what would you then choose to say to add to that point for the person who's listening, going, yeah, but I don't need to have challenges and I don't need to have problems, but they're not necessarily happy.
So the people who don't have challenges,
well, they think they don't have major challenges or no challenges that are worthwhile complaining about or worthwhile saying that they've got the big challenge, right? Like they don't have the cancer. They haven't gone through a big breakup. The kids are just being kids. They're, their parents are getting older, but they're just getting old. Like it's all just normal, right? And they don't feel like they have challenges, but they don't have this sense of calm and peace. And the reason I'm raising this is because what you were alluding to before is that you grow through the challenge. You go through the challenges you're facing. And a lot of people start to downplay the challenges they're facing, even though they're struggling with it a lot emotionally.
Yeah.
How can they become more aware of it? And what can they do to make sure that they can grow from every circumstance they're in their life?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's particular practices that they can do to make sure that their brain's kind of algorithming the right way for happiness, for sure. And for those people who haven't faced, I really hope people don't go through significant adversity like going through postnatal depression, right, to get resilience. I mean, I don't want people to go through that. But these are for the little setbacks as well, because it kind of builds up the pieces in the armor, when you get these little things that go on, maybe you have to rehome a puppy, right? Or like, I don't know, someone breaks into your car, these tiny little micro stresses that happen. Then there's definitely ways that we can kind of build grit and resilience from that. And also just a note for the audience that life does get pretty hard pretty fast, from 30 to 45. And what I mean by that is that, in your 40s and 50s, you kind of start realizing the finite nature of life. And your parents might get really, really sick. You might get sick. People start dying, right? So it can get really hard, really fast. You might become a parent, and those first few years are really, really tough. So we want to give people the tools to make them flex and bend a little bit quicker back, right, to growth. And ways that we can do that I've got a whole chapter in my book around mindset stuff and around resilience. But one of them is I'll just give you three. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, great. So one of them's the power of yet, however, if I. So that's for people who've got limiting beliefs, or they're going through, I think there's a lot of people who don't believe in themselves and they have imposter syndrome and stuff like that. So the power of yet's Dr. Carol Dweck's work. And then we've just kind of turbocharged it from our perspective with the words, however, if I. So let me give you a quick example. I can't speak publicly yet, right? Public speaking, my job, I do 10 keynotes a week. It's a lot. People in Australia, according to research, it's their number one fear, right? Number one fear in Australia.
Greater than the fear of death, or than their spouse leaving them. Yeah,
that's
wow.
Right. Number two is dying, right? It blows my mind. So people are more scared of public speaking than what they are of dying. And so it's a good example. If you have a fear of public speaking, then what we'll do is, I can't speak publicly yet, right? So you cap that sentence with the word yet, because it kind of unlocks then their potential. It helps them stay in a growth mindset. And then if they use these words, however, if I, they're three very powerful words because it puts up action up against their life lesson, right? So I can't speak publicly yet. However, if I join Toastmasters, that is free for everyone in their LGA that is listening from here in Australia. I practice more regularly. I have more fun with it. I take the pressure off myself. What happens? Right? You get there, right? You become more efficient at public speaking. So that's a really, really cool example of for forming up growth mindset and grit.
That's cool. Just before you make the second example, a mentor of mine in the past kept sharing with me that she decided that she'll never say no to people, especially in business opportunities. She'll never say no. She'll say yes if, and then it forces her to look for the opportunity. So if someone's like, give me 50% of your quite sizable large company, give me 50% of your company. So hang on, I'm not allowed to say no. It's like, give it to me without me paying anything, like without me giving you any cash. So hang on a second. But yes, if you come and work for free and generate $10 million worth of revenue for the next 2 years, then yes, you can have 50%. You'll take it. Go for it. Yes, if. It sounds very similar to what you're referring to.
That is really cool.
You can't have 50% of it for nothing yet. However, if you blah 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 blah.
I like this. This is cool. I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, go for it. That's
great.
Take it.
Thank you.
Number two,
I guess it's like another little mindset reframe with a word, right? You don't get the job that you really wanted. So instead of going, I have to go get another job, you change the I have to I get to. So I get to look for another job that's more aligned to my values. I get to take the time to really work out what I want. So I get to meet a new network of people while I'm job hunting. I find that one shift. I used to use it a lot when I used to commute. I have to commute to Sydney from South Coast. It's 2 hours on the train. Now, when you say it like that, it sounds really negative and we almost make it as a stressor in our life. But when we flip it to I get to commute to Sydney for 2 hours on the train, it's now unlocked as an opportunity.
Mhm.
So I get to have 2 hours to myself of quiet time. I get to listen to podcasts. I get to meditate halfway through that journey. I get to do work. I get to socially connect with my friends. That changes everything.
Mhm.
And then the third one, I think, is gratitude, which is just so, so powerful when it comes to resilience, because our brain is just naturally gravitating all the time towards the negative. It's just a part of our sort of, survival bias. Like we always have to look out for things that might kill us. And so what the power of gratitude does do is it helps rewire the brain and change the perspective. And the more that we practice these kinds of things, the more, neurons that fire together wire together. I'm sure you've heard of that before. So you wanted them to be wiring the same kind of, we want those connections firing down. So when, you wake up in the morning and you notice the beautiful sunset, or you start to appreciate and find joy. I remember mum, right? She'd always stop the car and go, "Hey, look how beautiful that sunset is." And when you're a young kid, you think, what the F, mom? Like, what are you doing? And the funny thing is when you start turning into yourself, she was right.
Mhm.
I cannot stop marveling at the sunrise at the back of our house. Harry, I look in awe at the sky all the time and I think, wow, who manicures the clouds like that? And then the color palette of the sky, and I just can't stop marveling at the sky. And I wouldn't have done that as my 28-year-old self. Like you find joy in the mundane things when you have that as a regular practice.
Mhm. Yeah, the small moments, the small bits. Yeah, beautiful. All right, so just for a moment, let's go back to your journey. I'm really curious how you decided, okay, great, EQ Minds. We're going to make sure I'm going to teach people how to build up their resilience, how to be happier and healthier, and have better well-being. A lot of it is mindfulness and with meditation and a whole bunch of other tools and resources as well. And you decided that's what you're going to do. And you mentioned that for the first 3 years you were doing everything yourself, right? The marketing, the delivery of the services, the curation of the services, the maintaining the website, and doing basically everything. Right. The
Mhm.
way a mentor described it to me once when I was thinking of leaving corporate world, it's like, well, right now you can go over to the stationery cabinet, take out the stationery you need, and then you use it. When you start your own business, you got to go to IKEA to buy the stationery cabinet, to set it, to then build it late at night, to then go and order the stationery online, to then be able to fill up the cabinet with it, right? Uh, how was that journey for you? How did you go from one man band or one woman band to be able to build up the business, to eventually be able to hire people as well, but
Mhm.
to even just getting your first big clients and getting the testimonials and getting the traction? How did you build up that snowball into what it is today?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. So, those first 3 years, no one sees that behind the scenes. They just don't. You're wearing absolutely every hat. You're on YouTube every day learning how to code a website. You're learning how to do a social media post. You're learning how to create a logo. You're learning how to, like, everything, right? I'm traveling to Sydney on the train for 2 hours to have a coffee with a potential client. Like that's the reality. That's the reality of the business. And you can only do that if you've got, for me anyway, because I'm a mother, is having a very, very supportive husband and a supportive partner to be able to do that. And so I think, one of how the business kind of, let's start with how it got traction and then I'll talk about scaling. So first 6 months, right? I'm doing everything for free. I am doing volunteering my time because I'm getting my content down and rehearsed, and I'm filming everything because I learned that in basketball, the only way I can improve is watching myself play. So I'm filming everything. And I mean, you think it's bad listening to yourself on a voicemail, wait till you see yourself
Yeah.
presenting, for the first few times.
It's like, I'd
And
rather not look at it. Don't let me look at it, please. Just no.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of my really good friends said to me, 6 months down the track, she said, "You know what, Chelsea, you should come and meet up with eBay." and my friend who works in HR, I just tell her what you're up to. I said, yeah, okay. So up I go on the train for a coffee with eBay. And I remember sitting down having a coffee, and I was telling eBay about this mindfulness stuff. And they're like, look, we're really interested in doing an hour session with you. I'm like, really? And then I said, and then I said to them, what's the budget? And they told me, and it literally just blew my mind. That's 7 years of hard work to get to that fee.
Yep.
Um,
That's like going, wow, that kid has such a tall tower. It's like, yeah, they've been working on it for an hour and not letting any other kids knock it down. Of course, all the other kids just build up this little high and then knock it down and go off to something else or whatever.
That's exactly right. And I actually do think there's something in that. I find with businesses, it's about 10 years. It's about 10 years to become a success. I really do think that. There's a very rare, like 1% of businesses that you see as these unicorns that sell it. But from what I can see, it's about a decade of hard work, right? And then people watch you and go, overnight you've become, no, that's been 10 years in the making.
Immediately from what you've shared so far in your journey, I'm reminded of the analogy, two analogies. There's the one of bamboo, like the bamboo shoots. You plant them, like you get them at like 1 meter tall or whatever it is, and you plant them in the ground. And for the first like year, 2 years, even nothing happens. Maybe even 3 years or 4 years, depending on your soil and the environment, nothing happens. Well, you can't see anything happening because it's just building really strong roots underneath. And then it starts growing 3 or 4 meters a year. It just skyrockets up. But people are like, oh, wow, you're blowing up. That's amazing. What did you change? It's like, nothing. I've just been doing the freaking work for that long. Right. And the other, I think, which is much more in its Eastern roots, is the concept of a lotus. The roots and the work which is being done is all in this yucky, crappy mud, like dark mud, underwater, murky water as well. They're just like fish around and everything, and all bugs which are inside. And before you ever see any flower, or even the bud of the flower, there's all of this work for years which is being done underneath. And it's only as a result of going down into the grit, into the dirt, into the mud, that you can then actually have something so beautiful come out of it. And most people, I think, see their lives as just that mud and crap and something which is kind of just shaky and you can't build anything from it. And I think what you've shared already is almost like an emulation of that, which is really beautiful.
Thank you. That analogy is so beautiful. And it's true. And I think it's really important to be honest about that, because otherwise it sets people up for failure. They try it for a year and like, well, I'm not successful like that. It doesn't happen in the year.
It's like, go and try meditation. Just do it. Just do 2 sessions, and then you're going to see all the benefits. Your amygdala is going to be super calm. It's going to be amazing. Look at the fMRI. Look at how much that's going to change after just 2 sessions. Like, no.
It's so true. It's so true. It takes time. It takes time. And that's the thing. I'm so grateful still to this day to eBay, because they were my first client and they're still a client of ours. And, I did that one session and they're like, oh my gosh, we love it. Can we do 8? And I'm like, right. So then I'd come home. I was just so beyond excited. Jay still thinks it's a cute hobby. And I'm like beyond. I'm like doing happy dances with our daughter. And so I go and create the content for another, a 8-part series of mindfulness journey. And then one of the general managers at eBay went to Uber, moved companies, and they're like, we love what you did there. Can you come to Uber with me? And so as you can imagine, right, when you start establishing these big brands as your first couple of clients in your books, all of a sudden Westpac has eyeballs on us. And they're like, hey, we've been seeing what you're doing on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Can you come to Westpac? And then all of a sudden all the 4 big banks come on board. And then you've got, your Googles, and then and so it just is like this incredible, and then it's like hanging on for dear life on this train that's just starting to take off. And as a young entrepreneur, not young in age, young in experience, for me, because this is, nearly, 2016. So that's 7 years ago now. But I think when you first start up your company, right, it becomes your identity. It can get really tied up in the company. that you're creating, and it becomes very hard to separate the two. And the faster I could separate my identity away from EQ Minds, the easier it became, and it is becoming for sure, to build a really impactful business. And so the other big thing was the keynote risk personnel, right? If I get sick, I am the brand and the company will close its doors. So I was almost operating as this very high, well-paid blue-collar worker. If I don't turn up, the company doesn't get paid. And so year 3, I hired a virtual assistant from Philippines. And the company was turning over pretty good coin, but I still couldn't justify a huge salary then. So she was awesome. Her name was Michelle. It was me and her just rocking it for a couple of years there. And then I started growing some more and I was starting to burst. And I'm like, I need a lot more people. Like this, I can't keep up with the demand. I also want to be able to have a big impact globally. I need more people in the team. And so I just kept tapping my husband on the shoulder. A couple of years it took me. Just, hey, darling, you could come and live this lifestyle. You could surf every day. I was just really just selling him the dream. But I needed someone that I could trust as a general manager, where there's an element of complementary skill set that is really helpful to the company. And, you know, I was looking for someone who's committed and had the intensity in terms of the drive and the humility. And I couldn't think anyone else except for Jay, my husband. And so he finally said yes. You know, he's like, I'll take a sabbatical. And I'm like, if you don't love it within a couple of weeks, if it's too much of a strain on the relationship, you know, you can always go back. And he said, yeah, okay. That was reassuring for him. And then within a couple of weeks, he's like, I love it. I never want to go back. This is awesome. And he's so committed. You know, he's really capable of doing hard things, my husband, and he was hardcore. And so no matter whatever happened, we knew that we were always going to pull through it. And he's very, very hard driving. He does an enormous amount of work. He's disciplined. He brings in a completely different element to the business from a financial perspective as well. I'm the dreamer. He's like the executor. But he's also exceptionally humble. And that's something that I also look at, you know, someone who's really willing to show appreciation. I really feel like teams with high humility, they tend to come up with the answer, you know, that's best for the company. And when the founder and you know, the general manager is not there going, well, this is what I came up with. I think it's really, really important, right? We don't have all the answers. You know, I think it's really important you lean on your team. So Jay comes in, we're then ready to hire a couple of digital marketers, so digital agency people. So they came on the books and they've changed us into a completely new sphere of the business. And then we started hiring speakers about a year ago. And that scaled quickly. You know, we now have 6 speakers on the books. So we have a team of 11 at the moment. And so we're just going to pause for the next few months with hiring and just really water and nourish those speakers to get them up and running, you know, because they've also taken a risk on joining our company too. And we want to make sure that they are financially thriving. They're really well taken care of. And so we're going to just pause for the moment on this 11, and then we'll go back out to the market at the end of the year, because I've got a different vision for where I'm taking the company, and that strategy is about 3 years away. And to be able to do that revenue-wise, I need about 32 speakers at the company. So we're growing significantly over the next 3 years. But it's great because I feel like we've got the model right. I feel like we've got the right people that we look for when we hire, and they're awesome. They're really on values with what our values are here at the company.
That's amazing. Are you happy to share more about where you're bringing the company to with your 32 speakers?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. So when I was in hospital, I don't want to throw too much shade at the hospital because it honestly saved my life. Like, I am so grateful to St. John of God. But it really gave me insight in terms of how these hospitals are not set up to heal people. Particularly, I was one of the lucky patients. I was in a private hospital in a mums and bubs psychiatric unit. So I was one of the blessed ones. So often, what happens when you have postnatal depression is that you end up in a public hospital with people who are very clinically unwell, and you're sharing a bedroom, maybe with someone who's got a drug-induced condition of bipolar or schizophrenia, and the food is not set up for you to heal. The lighting in the hospital, you have your psychiatric appointments in a white cupboard with no lights. You learn nothing about meditation. You don't learn, besides from me, because my psychiatrist is a weapon of a human being and she was awesome, but it's really reliant on medication, and which is great. Medication saved my life. I am still taking medication. I bloody love my anxiety meds. I will never come off them. But there is so many other tools in the toolkit that we need to have to thrive. And so when you have these moments, and I've always had these feelings with EQ Minds as a speaker business, but also with this vision, is to create these hospitals. And it's going to be about 3 years from now, because one, it's the timing of it. I will have finished my master's in psychology. Our daughter will nearly be going off to high school. And I'm doing all the groundwork at the moment. It takes a long time for things to come to fruition. But it's creating these hospitals for mental health hospitals. The niche we're going to start with is postnatal depression parents, because I understand that world very well, and create these hospitals like a wellness retreat where it'll have Eastern as well as your Western. So it's going to have psychologists and psychiatrists there. But if anyone listening has been to Gaia or Camp Eden or Gwingana or, a health retreat, you feel like you get well because the environment is designed that way. And so I can see this happening. I think about it before I go to bed. I dream about it. I think about it when I'm hiking in nature. And then the universe is rewarding me because I'm meeting people. I was in Colorado last week skiing. I met people in the lift who've got wellness hospitals in LA that I'm going to go visit. And these conversations start happening and start unlocking. And I feel like, Harry, we're in a crisis in Australia. There's so much awareness now for mental health and mental illnesses, but there's nowhere to send anyone. We can't get in to see a psychologist for 6 months. You can't get in to see a psychiatrist nearly for a year. You cannot get a hospital bed, and you do not want a hospital bed.
That's even if people are able to get past the stigma of seeking help for the challenges which they're facing, right?
That's right. That's right. Whereas imagine if you came to a place that's down on the South Coast where you walk in and you are nourished and you're truly loved. And you're like, welcome, you're here to heal. We'll take care of you here. And the environment is set up the right way. And so that's where we're heading.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It's what you're starting to talk about is you're talking about basically creating a new format of the system that currently exists, but in a kind of taking it more towards the wellness side, right? You're viewing it almost like you're viewing it from the lens of the people who see how valuable coaching is, and for them, they've probably had more benefit from coaching than they've had from having a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, or a psychotherapist. But they can see value in both sides, and so it's like, well, why don't we just give the benefit of both and kind of have them together?
Absolutely, because when you're unwell, you need psychology and you need psychiatry, but you also need organic food, and you also need a really good bed that doesn't have a plastic pillow, and you also need your own room, and you need a nice shower, and you need to learn movement, and you need to learn a stress management tool and things like that. And you need caring, people on site who are looking after you and nourishing you. And so it's that blended approach. The two don't have to sit separately from each other. And so I think it has to be done. If we can't do it from a government perspective, then private owners are going to have to do that. And I know I'll get the right investors on my side for that. I do know that. I've got a
Awesome.
great network of people. I've got people who are mission led, who want to have a great impact on people's mental health, where
Mhm.
their legacy is to leave this planet a better place, than what they walked into it. And so I can see this happening.
I was chatting with Chris Rain recently. He was on a previous podcast episode, and his Hello Sunday Morning, so the Daybreak app, and helping people drink less ultimately if they wanted to, which started somewhat similar to you. He just not as dire or not as extreme, but he continues to face depression and anxiety, and uh, he basically helps people completely outside of the medical system be able to try and heal through community, or try and drink less, or have support, those types of things. And he took a step away from it to let it become its own thing, and now is working on engaging with medical professionals and trying to get GPs more informed about addiction and more informed about the different options. I just love seeing these sprouts of people like yourself and like Chris and like a whole range of others, which it's just beautiful. Like just seeing you're taking these steps to kind of just make everything more holistic, something which was designed 100 years ago or 150 years ago, or maybe even more, and doesn't have the same rate of change as
Thanks, Harry.
what you're starting to do now. It's really beautiful.
Well, it's completing that circle, isn't it? It's completing that first hospital admission to then helping people not fall into the river, by our corporate training and our workshops and our keynotes. And that if we don't get to someone quickly and they fall in, we've got the place to send them to. And so it's almost like completing that circle of my story of this is the adversity, this is the growth, this is the purpose, and here's the legacy.
What would you, in the limited time that we have left, it sounds like you'd have a very strong message to share for people with, especially mothers with postnatal depression, especially those who never even had it diagnosed, or when it was diagnosed, they were kind of given some meds, asked to speak to a psychologist, and it didn't really necessarily help that much. I know I've known quite a few women in that position, quite a few mothers, and it sounds like you have a very strong message to be able to share with them. If they're listening right now, what would you want to share with them to help them through it?
I would say that 1, you're never alone. 2, the quicker you can reach out for help and get yourself to safety, whether that's to the Gidget Foundation. So for those people who don't know who the Gidget Foundation are, they're an incredible charity here in Australia that look after mums and dads experiencing perinatal or postnatal anxiety and depression. I didn't know about the Gidget Foundation when I went through my stuff, Harry, but my goodness, I wish I did. I'm now a very proud ambassador for them. So they've got free psychologists and psychiatrists on board, right? For rural patients and stuff like that, they are fantastic. So 1, you're never alone. 2, reach out to the right people. Go and see the right people to get yourself back to safety. 3, one of the things that really helped me was hope, optimism stories. So when I was in hospital, someone dropped me off Jessica Rowe's book, and I was reading her book, and I thought, my goodness, if Jess Rowe could go through something like what I've just going through right now, maybe there's hope for me. Maybe I too can also survive this. And I mean, that the story of Jess Rowe has just been incredible, because when I was reading her story, I thought, I'm going to meet her one day to say thank you for having an impact and saving my life also. And I did. She ended up becoming an MC at one of the Business Chicks events that I was doing across Australia, and I had a moment on stage with her, and she was introducing me to let her know that her story saved my life, and it was very emotional for both of us. But finding people that can hear you when you're going through stuff like that, follow us on Instagram at EQ Minds. If you feel like you don't have a community of people who understand mental health, come and join us, right? Our whole community, they love each other. There's like 97,000 people there who are massive into mental health, and they're very, very supportive. So it's finding your little tribes that can support you through it, and just knowing that this too will pass. Even though sometimes you might not feel it, you might not feel like this trans will lift. It will. It will eventually lift. And maybe
Mm.
one day you can help someone else going through it too.
That's a beautiful message.
Thanks, Harry.
Is there anything else which you'd want to share with the listeners? I'm mindful of your time. Is there anything else which you want to share with the people who are listening, who have just basically learned your journey, understand your personality pretty well and your upbringing, understand what you do at EQ Minds as well, and they're listening to this? What other messages might you want to leave with them?
I think the main message is that if you learn something that impacts your mental health and well-being today, say you learned something, right? Or you learned something out there and you're reading it, or you're listening to Harry's podcast, or you're watching an interesting Netflix doco like Stutz, which is amazing, or Marty Fisher's documentary on Netflix that's about mental health, and you learn something. I always say this to people in my workshops or keynotes, is that please take that one tool out of there, that one learning, and teach it to someone else that you love more than yourself in this life. Because two things will happen here. One, it's going to embed down here into your memory center stronger. So you're going to hook into this new habit and you're going to stay consistent. So you're going to have a more thriving, well life. But two, which I think is even more powerful, is that you're bringing someone else on this mental well-being journey. And I think what a beautiful world that would look like if we're just out there, right? Just teaching each other, helping each other out, one technique at a time.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful message to end it on. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. I've loved our chat.
Okay, so that was a really rewarding conversation. I hope you found it just as rewarding as I did in terms of learning from Chelsea's life and her journey and her mission and her purpose. We explore so many things. And obviously, we ran short on time, but I felt that it was warranted to do a quick summary of this conversation as well. When we started talking about how Chelsea defines success, well, to her now, it's different to what it used to be. It used to be job titles and careers and possessions. And we ultimately tend to present a distorted image of who we are. And then that becomes like compounding interest or compounding debt, I guess you could call it, with a bank. We become rigid. And the more we become rigid, or the more we identify with how other people perceive us, the more closed off to change we become. And so ultimately, she was sharing that her choices in the past were based on self-importance and her wealth and her status and success and those types of things. And she's realized now that with 8 years at EQ Minds, there's no progress without humility. She's now living a much calmer life, a more purposeful life. She has more impact on other people. She has more connection with friends and family and other people that she cares about. And she's creating beautiful memories. She even changed her entire lifestyle. And so that was an awesome journey that she went on, right? She had obviously a very beautiful upbringing from her mother. Her mother even shared two main things with her when she was young. One was if she saw a beautiful sunset, to stop the car and just, wow, what a beautiful sunset. Oh, isn't that amazing? And look at that. Isn't that stunning? Can't we be grateful for this as well? That's beautiful. And the other thing is we gather more flowers with an open hand than with a closed fist. Meaning that we can allow more opportunity when we are open to it rather than when we're closed off and we're trying to just kind of focus on just one thing. When we're open to whatever the opportunities are, we're going to have far more beauty, joy, and love in our lives. And so she worked in medical device sales. She was she was the top performer in medical device sales of the year for a few years in a row. She described it being in eastern suburbs, which is where I am, of Sydney. Long days, coffee, like triple flat whites, lots of alcohol, lots of working out hard, partying hard, and it was ultimately all unsustainable. And it took her 7 years to fall pregnant, and that only happened after she left her work. Like after she left Johnson & Johnson, where she was, she finally, I guess, had less stress and felt more aligned, and then was able to fall pregnant after 7 years of trying. She had the child, but then she had postnatal depression. She was in hospital for 5 weeks. She just couldn't trust herself in public. And then she started thinking, just towards the end of those 5 weeks, I'm not going to change the world from here. She started thinking like her old self again. Like, what can I do? What can I change? How can I make this for the better? How can I adopt the beginner's mindset or learner's mind? How can I really apply this? Well, I'm not going to change the world from here on the hospital bed. And so her psychiatrist was amazing, helped her see that she could take the message from this trauma and turn it into purpose, right? How do we change post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth? And she's lived it. She was asked an amazing question by a psychiatrist. How do you want to feel in the life moving forward? Not what do you want to have, like not what are the things that you want to get to or where do you want to live or those types of things. How do you actually want to feel? And she shared that there was ease and peacefulness and less anxiety. And so she got out of hospital. She decided to move to a much calmer place outside of the hustle and bustle of the city, 2 hours by train away. She went to study psychology to be calmer. Her lifestyle changed, moved out of the city. She changed with different people that she connects with. She watches different things, and she spent quite a bit of time over at Nantian Temple down in Wollongong. And one of the monks shared with her that sometimes the hardship creates the cracks that bring the lights in. And so she started realizing, wow, this is really impactful for people. This could be really helpful in the corporate world. I've got to help people with this. And from her husband's perspective, it was just a hobby. But for her, it was an absolute mission. And so for the first few years, no one sees the growth, right? You're busy on YouTube looking up hacks, how to design your logo, how to build up a website, how to do the marketing, how to approach people, how to do social media, how to actually deliver the service, how to be more efficient with your time. She'd travel 2 hours to Sydney to catch up for coffee with a potential client with no guarantee of anything actually coming from it. And she couldn't have done it without a really supportive family. And I guess for other people, maybe it's when they don't have responsibilities, right? Like no one to actually care for, maybe, but you need to have the support to be able to do that. And she said that for the first 6 months, she did everything for free, volunteering her time, filming everything, curating all of it. And then finally, a friend of hers who was in HR at eBay said, come along to eBay and just talk about mindfulness. And Chelsea shared that it takes 10 years for most businesses to become a success. And most people just try for a year and then they're not successful, and so they'll just give up. And so eBay's still a client of hers. That one session turned into 8 sessions, and then a GM from there moved across to Uber and gave her a contract there as well while she kept working for eBay. And then Westpac saw what she was doing, and then all the 4 big banks came in, and then you get the Googles and the Amazons and then those types of companies. And then she described it, she's just hanging on for dear life. And she's like, And so she found it very hard to start to separate her identity from EQ Minds. It can only grow so much, but it can't keep growing if EQ Minds is just her. It's got to be something more. And so the more that she could separate from it, and the more that she has been separating from it, the easier it is to build a really impactful business. Because at the time, she had like a really nice, high-paying job, but not a business. She owned a job. I think it was in her 3rd year, she got a virtual assistant from Philippines and that was for a couple of years. And then she couldn't keep up with demand. She needed more impact globally. She needed more speakers, all those types of things. So she convinced her husband to become general manager. She just couldn't think of anyone else who would be as committed to it. He finally said yes to a sabbatical from his work, and like 2 weeks minimum. And 2 weeks in, he was excited for it and is loving it, and he wouldn't go back. Brought on digital marketers. They changed everything, hired more speakers a year ago. She's got a team of 11. And she's trying to water and nourish those speakers and the team to get them up and running. She wants to grow to 32 speakers, and now she's growing to be able to help people really heal rather than just be treated for disease in hospital, to really heal and become the best versions of themselves. And so some of the things which really explored here is like this idea that she's always had this tenacity, right? As a kid, her coach said, you're just not good enough yet to get there. But if you do the hard work and you wake up early when it's freezing cold, and I'll do it with you, we'll make sure that you get there. And so she did. She learned discipline and grit and independence, and she found that was really important. Cultivating those skills for herself was really exceptionally important for her to be able to build up a company like EQ Minds. She was working 3 jobs when she was 14 years and 9 months. She was doing so much. Like she's always just nonstop. And so maybe you could say, well, she's just that kind of person. Or you could also, and she had that upbringing that allows her to do it. Or you could say, maybe some people are much better at it than I am, but I can take on just a little bit. If I can take on a little bit of what I've heard from her today, then I might be able to grow just a little bit more. And so she's found that you can be much more calm and be a high performer. You can be a mindful high performer, right? She wrote a book literally called Mindful High Performers. And she's very happy that science is catching up. We spoke about the amygdala, we spoke about the hippocampus, we spoke about increasing activity in the prefrontal cortex, making better decisions. And when we're calmer, we're going to make better decisions. We're going to improve or increase our performance later on. And so she describes herself as a constant learner, or constantly having a learner mindset. She has a daughter. She wants her daughter to hit the pavement. She has to hit the cement. She has to have challenging times, but also empowering her with the tools and the motivation to keep moving forward and to keep growing up. And I would imagine, if we had time and I asked her about it, that she would have said, if I said, well, how do you help people how do people learn to do that themselves if they don't have that upbringing which encourages them to be able to be more empowered and have more motivation? How do you encourage people to do it? And she probably would have said that it's never too late to start, that now's the time where you can really keep doing it for yourself. Learn the tools, get the motivation, allow yourself to fail, do it in an intelligent way, but allow it to happen. You can have the big setbacks and you can have little setbacks too. And she was talking about how between age 30 and 45, life gets pretty hard pretty quick. You see people dying, you get older, your body gets weaker, you have kids, or maybe your career, usually you end up having more responsibility. And she shared 3 really great tools, which I'm going to finish on this with. One is the power of yet. So I can't do public speaking yet. As opposed to I can't do public speaking, I'm not good. I can't do public speaking yet. However, if I go to Toastmasters, then I'll be able to do it. I can't do meditation yet. I don't have time for meditation. Or I haven't created time for meditation yet. However, if I ... what would you need to do to allow yourself to be able to do it? And then similarly, she's found it very powerful to shift have to get to. So I have to go to Sydney. I get to go to Sydney. I have to look after my daughter this afternoon. I get to look after my daughter this afternoon. And then similarly, she's spoken a lot about building resilience through gratitude and practicing gratitude. So I hope this conversation was really helpful. And I hope that you've been able to find something in your life that you're able to apply to be able to make it, to be able to make your life better. She gave an amazing final message for the listeners. She said, if there's something that you've heard here or somewhere else on another episode of this podcast or some documentary you've been watching, and there's something that you learn that you want to apply in your life, well, firstly, you'll find it easier to apply in your life if you're able to explain it to someone else and also get some level of accountability with them as well. And secondly, when you're explaining it to someone else and you're helping them, then that's just creating more impact. And it creates ultimately just a better world. So it was a real treat to have Chelsea on this podcast. And I hope that you got a lot of benefit from it as well. Remember to subscribe and like below and check out some of the episodes and check out EQ Minds as well. She's doing some amazing work. See you next time.